Welcome back, students. Welcome to another awesome episode, Lesson 8, Basement Flooring. And I'm going to discuss how the professionals get the basement floor to look as smooth as a baby's bottom. And this is one of those lessons that I used outside help and paid the professionals to do. Remember, out of a 1,000-day project that I had as a do-it-yourself project, I actually used about 25 days of professional help, and then this would be one of those days. But before we get into it, I wanted to give a quick plug for our PhD program. In the next video, I give you a quick plug for the master's degree in legal defense. So I wanted to do our PhD program real quick with our categories that we teach in conservative political activism. And really, we shouldn't have to be in political activism as conservatives, because this country was founded on Christian moral principles. And we know that Christ said that there's only two types of people in every pocket of world history, the lost and the found. And John the Revelator expounded and said, yep, it's actually the Christ principled and the Antichrist principled. So I just want to let everybody know, from the words of John Adams, that this country is founded for the Christian, by the Christian, and of the Christian, because essentially, in my opinion, back in the 1600s, this was actually 100% Christian. So what's happening today is the activism by the Antichrist principled in this country, who typically vote for a certain political party in Congress, which I'm not going to mention because I don't want to be political. I'm kind of like Billy Graham. I stay out of politics. So hopefully you've been able to read this little cue card and find out what the PhD program is about. And now we will get back into our lesson here. So, step 1, planning the milestone. So ever think that you could come this far in your do-it-yourself project, students? Ever think that you could overcome procrastination, doubt, negative influences of some of your family members? Well, I've had them all. And of course, my biggest is going to be hindrances from negative influences of family members. If you're going to take on a project of this magnitude and actually succeed, you've got negative influences. And also, I will say my neighbors. I cover my neighbors in a couple lessons in the future, but you need to watch out for your neighbors. They're very jealous and vicious people, and keep your mouth shut around these people. That's my little tidbit, but you can go to the future lessons and find out. I got a couple of tidbits about neighbors. So tools and equipment: 100-foot tape measure, cement, trowel, 12-foot tape measure, chalk line, tool belt with ample supplies, orange spray paint, string, stakes, rake, shovel, pickaxe, laser, bobcat, and proper attire. Step 2, we're going to be doing the pier holes. These are actually going to be filled with concrete and actually will be supporting the entire inside structure of your home, and you will have piers inside your basement to hold up your house. So as you can see from the pictures, students, my certified blueprints here, there's 2 types of holes to be dug in the structural concrete pads, which will eventually support the entire home. One is going to be a 2-foot by 2-foot hole. The other is going to be 4-foot by 4-foot hole. And each one is 2 feet deep and will be filled with concrete. So tip, it's best to read over your blueprints and mark them up on a duplicate copy. I've made numerous underscores in these lessons. Make sure you copy these at one of those copy places, students, where you can get the full 4 feet by 3 foot sheets of blueprints, or however big they are. I forget the exact dimensions, but you want a nice, good, exact copy in your hands. So what you want to do actually is, take out your tape measure. You want to measure from, pick a wall or a corner, and make sure you are exact at the placement of these piers, because your subfloor is going to have to be held up in the exact position where they are marked on the blueprint. So Once you make that determination, go ahead and spray paint either a 2 foot by 2 foot box or 4 foot by 4 foot box into the ground. That's what you're going to use your Bobcat bucket, and you're going to dig out the hole, and go ahead and give yourself a generous dig. If it's 2 feet deep, I think I went 2.5 feet. It's okay to add extra concrete, but I wouldn't go too shallow. In anything that you do in this DIY project, make sure you go over and above the call of duty. I know that these certified architect prints really label everything out. I mean, load-bearing walls, beams, structures, trusses for ceilings. But make sure you go over the call of duty when you actually install these things with nail screws, bolts, and log screws as well. So, all right, step 3, inserting rebar. So once we have the holes dug for these pier, you're going to have number 5 rebar, which is bigger than number 4 rebar. Now, number 4 rebar is coming up in the next lesson for the insertion of your concrete walls, but you need to use number 5 rebar for your footers and also your basement floors. Okay, and then go ahead and construct a semicircle, or you're trying to get a rectangle, and I couldn't do it because I didn't have a vise, but I used my foot and I got close to a rectangle as I could. And then it's got to cover, if it's a 2 foot deep hole, the rebar should come up 2 feet, because that gives it strength in the hole, so you're not just filling it with concrete, but you have extra strength in there as well. And then step 4 would be you need to clean up the floor here. So, I mean, you're looking at heaps of dirt in the center where you dug out. Make sure you remove all of that. You can shovel it into mounds of wheelbarrow, or you can use your Bobcat. And remember that this is going to be stoned later on in this lesson, so it has to be very clean and flat for your basement floor. Okay. Step 5, insert first layer of ICF blocks. So this step actually is going to be glued down in the next video, but I want you to lay out, without gluing it down, the first circumference of the entire ICF blocks around your footer, so that you can get a bird's eye of how much gravel you're going to need and where the gravel is going to go at this point. And you also want to be very careful when you square these and also center them, that you're not going to knock it out with wind at this point. So but you do have to use adhesive on the outside of these blocks to glue them down, and I'm sorry, on the inside of the blocks to glue them down, because that's where your cement floor is going to go. In the next lesson, you'll glue down the outside of these blocks, but make sure that they are squared when you place them down. They lock in like Legos. And look at the next lesson, lesson 9, if you don't understand on how these blocks work. Okay. Step 6, gravel the basement floor. Okay, so your footer is poured. You got your ICF blocks glued down, and then what's going to happen is a gravel truck's going to come out. They could actually have a conveyor belt to shoot the gravel around your basement floor, which would be nice. If you don't, you're going to have to dump the gravel. He may be able to dump it over the footer and into the floor. I don't know, but if he dumps it outside of your basement floor, you're going to have quite a journey of moving all that gravel into the floor itself. So make sure you got a good 2 to 4 inches of gravel, depending on the recommendations for your area. And also, they have different types of gravel. They got 1 inch minus, 3 inch minus. I would go with 2 inch minus for the gravel for the basement, because that's what I used. But you can also ask around and find out what they use in your region at that point. So they do put in lines in your basement floor with a laser so that it will crack on those lines, which was very nice, by the way. So, all right, so now look around, make sure everything is cleaned, your gravel is all spread out. You don't fill up those pier holes with gravel, by the way, students. You need at least 2 inches and 4 inches in those holes, but then you got to fill those up with concrete. Make sure that your first layer of ICF block is glued in. And then what you're going to do is call the power trowel guys, which I used a professional company. Took them all day to do the floor, but they did a nice job. And then they have the skills to make the floor, look like a baby's behind. It's so smooth. So what they'll do is they'll coordinate with cement truck drivers. I think it took 3 or 4 cement trucks. And they came and they started dumping. As you can see from the video here, they started in one end, and then they used this large extended pole cement trawl to smooth it out. And then they use a laser. They had a laser set up in one of the corners, and they keep checking all day as they pour more concrete to make sure that they've got everything systematically in order as they continue one truck after another. And then what they do is, they keep smoothing it out, and then once they get it laser leveled accurately, then they let it sit for about, I'd say, 2 hours. And during that time that they're letting it sit, step 8 here will be drill holes in the footer. They go around inside of the first layer of ICF blocks, and they'll drill every 2 feet a hole into the footer itself, and then they'll put in a number 4 rebar. Let's say they drill a foot into the footer. They'll put in a 3-foot long piece of number 4 rebar, so it goes a foot into the footer, then sticks up 2 feet. What that's going to do is when you build your ICF basement wall, let's say it's 8 feet high with the ICF blocks in the next video, that'd be video number 9, these 2-foot spans of rebar that actually are sticking out of the footer, you will actually put in an 8-foot span down so that you will have vertical pieces of number 4 rebar every 2 feet inside your basement wall, which gives it strength. And then, of course, in the next lesson, you're going to learn you'll also have number 4 rebar that snaps in horizontally into the ICF blocks. So if you had X-ray vision, you would see a perfect checkerboard of number 4 rebar inside your basement wall, going vertical and also horizontally. So that's pretty much it. And then lastly, when that's done, when they got all these 2-foot pieces in, they will actually start this massive fan up, which you can see from the video, and usually one guy will walk. You can walk on the concrete at that time when you won't have your shoe prints. But this high-powered fan will smooth it out even more. And, of course, it's got to be done in between fully drying and partly drying so that it's strong enough to walk on without leaving shoe prints. But it's also weak enough and curer to allow for the fan to push the concrete even smoother at that point. So they're very professionally done. I was very pleased at what they did. So, all right, and then in closing, students, please give us a $5 tax donation, tax-deductible donation at www.university1310.org. And as always, please click the thumbs up and then subscribe to the channel, because the more ratings also looks much better as well. So, all right, Godspeed and safe travels, and we will see you in the next video.